Okay, so let's talk about 585 permanent hair color. Now, permanent hair color is going to be basically there forever on the hair. Now, it will lighten up as you are doing any kind of heat applications, as well as when you go out into the sun, it's going to change the coloration of it, but pretty much the molecules will stay on the hair. Now, permanent hair color typically has the largest molecules. Okay, so in order to actually apply permanent hair color, you're going to have to get it in through that cuticle. We're going to have to open up that cuticle to get it in there. Okay, so when you're using permanent hair colors, they can use to be lightening the hair if it is virgin hair, and we can darken the hair no matter if it has color on it or not. Okay, it is a single process. And the reason why it's a single process is because it has alkaline in it. Okay. It has more alkaline than the demi, and it has more alkaline than, of course, semi colors do. And it's mixed with typically usually a higher developer. Now, developers are used so that we can apply the color, and it's going to help to lift, soften, and swell that cuticle, and lift that cuticle so that we can apply the color. Now, if you notice on the cuticles, these are hair strands right here. Okay, so you have a very low porosity, which means that porosity is the hair's ability to absorb water. Then you have a moderate, which is a normal porosity, and then you have a very high porosity. Okay, so these are typically virgin hair right here, where there's very little done to it other than shampooing and conditioner. The more processing that we do, it starts to lift up that cuticle. You can see now it looks a little rougher here. And it's starting to lift up that cuticle until bam, that cuticle is wide open. So now you're going to have kind of dry hair, like you see right here at the ends. You're going to have a higher porosity on there. And sometimes those cuticles don't even ever close. So very important whenever you're thinking about this, okay? So the more bleach you put on the hair, the more chemical processes of perms and such that you put on the hair, those cuticles will open up and sometimes they'll never close again. And so even if you were to put a temporary hair color on there, it could actually stain that cortex and adhere to that color. And the only way to get rid of it is basically grow the hair out, because by that time it's too far damaged there. You can try to wash it out and let it dry out, go out, and eventually some of it will go, but some of it's going to stay. Okay. With permanent hair color, you want to basically use to lighten and to match gray. Um, permanent hair color is some of the best to use on gray hair, and the products require a patch test. Now, a patch test is where you apply some color to the skin behind the ear, or actually at the elbow, in the inside of the arm, and then you can apply this color, and in 24 to 48 hours, you want to see if the person had a reaction to it. Now, the reaction that you're looking for could be anything from swelling, blistering, redness, rash. Any of those can be a reaction towards this hair color, meaning that they have an allergen to it. Now, is it law? No, it's not law, but it's required to have in schools. It is supposedly required to have in salons, but most salons don't do this. Now, is it foolproof? Absolutely not. Having a patch test means basically nothing. It assures that that day there's not going to be a reaction, but it doesn't mean tomorrow there won't be a reaction. 9 times out of 10, or I would say 7 times out of 10, most likely the person is not going to develop an allergy overnight, but they could. It's a possibility. The more you could have somebody use a color on their head the entire lives, and then one day come in and all of a sudden have a massive reaction towards that color, because you can develop reactions. So we have to be careful about the color that we use. But patch tests are required in our schools, and we will perform a patch test 24 to 48 hours before a color is performed. Now, permanent hair colors contain uncolored dye precursors, okay? Now, they're very small molecules. They can easily penetrate into the hair shaft. And these dye precursors are also called aniline derivatives. So just think of them as little bitty pellets or little bitty balls that can go right inside of that cuticle. So if you notice here on your screen, you have that cuticle. So these balls, once you put that developer on there, will lift this cuticle up. From this, it'll expose that cuticle like this, and all of a sudden it's going to let all that color go in there. Those dye precursors, those aniline derivatives go inside of here, okay? And it's going to help to get the color within the cortex. So basically what's going to happen is it's going to lift that cortex, it's going to draw the color that's in there out, and it's going to dump the color that we want to put in there in. Now this is done by developers. Developers can range from anywhere, actually from about 5, which you can see one here. This is about a level 5, level 6, which is used for basically kind of deposit, but it can lighten the hair some. And then they go from 10, 20, 30, 40. Now, if you know the level system, which is going to be 1 through 10, then you're going to know that if you drop the 0 off of each level or off of each developer, that's going to tell you what level you can bring that hair up to. So if you have somebody that has virgin hair, they've never had color, they've never had anything done to their hair, then if you were to use a level 10 developer on them, or not level 10, but a 10 volume developer on them, and you were to use it on somebody that has a level 5 hair color, you could bring them up to a level 6, possibly a level 7 hair color. If you were to use a 20 on them, you could bring it up to a level 7. If you were to use a 30 on them, you could bring it up to a possible level 8. And if you were to use 40 on them, you could possibly bring them up to a level 9. Okay, so just remember 1, 2, 3, 4 means the levels. Drop the 0 and you have the levels that you use on them. Okay, that's how we use it for bleach, and that's how we use it for color as well. Now, if you have somebody that has color in their hair and they want to change or lift the hair color, you cannot do that simply with developer and color, because you cannot lift color with color. You can extract the color using a color remover or bleach and then deposit color into a lighter color. Okay, so that's our developers. So these developers come in liquid form. They can be very creamy. They can be more like, they can look like water when you have them, depending on how thin that you want the developers. But that is the developers in a nutshell for you there. Okay, these developers are combined with the actual hair color, and they're mixed typically on a 1:1 to 1.5 ratio, meaning that you'll have 1 ounce of color and 1 ounce of developer. And it could also be 1 ounce of color to 1.5 ounces of developer, depending on if you're doing gray coverage or not. Okay, so once you mix this with the hair color and you apply it to the hair, there's dye precursors in the color, also known as aniline derivatives. Please remember that word, dye precursor and aniline derivatives. They contain small uncolored dyes that combine with the hydrogen peroxide found in your developer. Now, these molecules are trapped within the cortex of the hair, and they can not be easily shampooed out. Eventually, they do lighten as time goes by, with time and also with sun damage, and if they swim in chemical pools. Also, if they're using any kind of heat treatments on their hair, that helps to lighten the hair, but there still will always be there. Now, permanent hair colors can use to lighten as well as darken. If you have somebody that has color in their hair already and you want to darken, that's not a big deal. But you do need to be aware of your color laws when you're doing this. Now, just remember, you have to get through this cuticle using that, okay? And you don't want to leave your cuticle looking like this. You want that cuticle go back in there. Now, if you have some color left over, and let's say you have about 1 ounce of color left over, you can, and you're doing a retouch on somebody, which is also a permanent hair color application, you can do what we call a soap cap. A soap cap is where you take whatever amount of color that you have left over in your bowl. So say, for instance, 1 ounce of color. Then you want to mix that with 1 ounce of shampoo that you have there. Don't use your best shampoo, just use a shampoo. But now if you are using something, if you're trying to get rid of brassiness or stuff like this, then use a blue shampoo. If you're trying to get rid of the yellow, and use a purple shampoo and mix it with that color, and then apply the rest of that color to the hair and shampoo it in there. Leave it in there about 5 minutes and then rinse well. Now, this is done at the end of the process. So if the person has about 5 minutes left or 6 minutes left to go with the color application, then go ahead and take them to the wash bowl, get them fitted into the chair. You want to drizzle water on the hair. Don't saturate it. Just drizzle water on the hair. Don't wet, or you can drizzle a little bit of water on the color application too. Then you want to take your shampoo and mix it with your color, 1-to-1 ratio, and then apply that to the hair that did not have color. And you can take your hands and go through the hair that had color in it, and then bring that down through the rest of the hair so that all the color, now what that will do is give it that hair more shine and vibrancy, and it looks new again without having to do the entire head. And so this is something that will be a great little add-on for your clients. They will love you for it. Their hair will look fresh, and it will also help to make sure that that color that you just, the new color you applied, blends very well. Okay, so very, very important. Now, permanent hair coloring products are the best products for removing pigment, for lightening. They're used for adding color. They're used with great gray coverage as well. And so when you're using these colors, just make sure that you are being aware of what the manufacturer wants to have the application. They put on their ratios because that was the best results that they did receive when they're applying that particular color and doing studies on that color. So because you have years of experience doesn't always mean that your years of experience are going to exceed what the actual manufacturers want you to use. So make sure you are reading that, whether it is a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-1.5 ratio. This is very important when you're applying color. So there are many color lines out there that will be for you to choose and what you find is best to use at your salon. And currently right now in our clinic, we are using Solarm products, and it is from Spain. It's a very rich color line with a 1-to-1 ratio on gray coverage, or a 1-to-1.5 on regular coverage. Again, you can use developers that range from 5 volume, 10, 20, 30, 40. And make sure that you know that if you drop the 0, that tells you the level that you can go up. If you are going lower, then I would suggest that you just use nothing but a 10. Okay, and because you're just going to be depositing color at that time, you just want to open up the cuticles enough to deposit that darker color in there and change the color that's in there. Make sure that when you are doing this, you don't want to go more than 2 or 3 levels down. If you do, you're going to have to use a filler, and that is something we'll have on a different lecture. But this is 585 permanent hair color.